The year is 2017, and the early versions of Hello Neighbour are being played by every Let's Play YouTuber, with each video gaining millions of views. Then why is it that when the full game was released for the first time in December 2017, it was received with much disappointment and confusion, and went on to score a measly 38 on Metacritic? And fast forward to today, Hello Neighbour's popularity is at an all-time low. So what actually happened to make the indie horror game go from one of the most anticipated video games of the year to receive one of the largest amounts of modern hatred a video game can possibly receive? Well, I'm about to tell you if you give me a minute. Hello Neighbour was a horror game developed by Dynamic Pixels and released to the world by tinyBuild. To really get an idea of the unique concept that the game promised from the start, you have to begin by looking at the earliest versions of the game, from 2016 through to 2017, known as the Alphas. Pre-alpha was the first proper reveal of the objective of the game. You play as a kid that has to try and break into your creepy neighbour's house without him seeing you, so that you can find out what he is hiding in his basement. But the twist was that the neighbour's AI was able to learn your moves over time, and it could predict what you would do next, making the game increasingly difficult to beat the longer that you played. Sounds interesting, doesn't it? The gaming community clearly agreed at the time, as various YouTube videos portraying the game quickly garnered millions of views, skyrocketing the game's popularity. Now, pre-alpha was pretty buggy, but it was only an alpha, so all players were very optimistic for the game, and it showed clear potential. The next teaser of the game was Alpha 1. This version was a little less buggy, but the house. Oh, the house. Much bigger and more difficult to navigate and solve its puzzles. I remember particularly liking the shark room at the top of the staircase, which looking back really does justify it being a horror game. However, this is soon to change. But the game by now was a pretty popular title, with a growing reputation. The next release was Alpha 2, and yes, the house now looks like something out of a kid's film, not exactly fitting for a horror game. From this point onwards, the game starts to feel less like a horror game and more like a kid's puzzle game. Now don't get me wrong, this alpha was still very fun to play, and the mystery of what was to be found in the neighbour's basement remained. However, once Alphas 3 and 4 were released, along with the beta versions, things started to go wrong for the developers. Fans went from playing in a tiny colourful neighbour's house straight to this. The enjoyment of the neighbour's AI still stayed the same, however the game started to feel more like solving puzzles and parkouring around the huge mansion, than actually playing the horror game that was promised. If you are like me, I find nothing more infuriating than missing a parkour jump for the 13th time because of a stupid bug, and then getting caught by the neighbour. Alpha 4 was roughly the same as Alpha 3, except the house was made bigger yet again, and there were some bug fixes, although many bugs remained in the game, as we will see in a minute. But by summer 2017, all of the alphas and beta versions of the game had showed great potential, and by December 2017, the wait was finally over. The much anticipated Hello Neighbour full game was released for $30, or £22 if you are British like me. The first act of the game introduces the story, as well as giving you a main goal, which was to enter the basement. The neighbour's house in the actual game is tiny, and of a colourful style, just like it was in Alpha 2. The style is quirky, but I'm not really sure it fits a horror game too well. But I guess you can't judge a book by its cover. As you are introduced to the story of the game, you are shown exactly whereabouts in the house you can find the red key, which opens the door of the basement. I think this is the first problem that makes this first act of the final release much worse than the alphas. What made the alphas fun was having to explore the entire house, evading the neighbour to try and find the items that you needed to beat the game. However, the real game seems more instructive and less of a mystery of exploring each room in the neighbour's mansion. Once you finally manage to open the basement door, you get to find out what is hidden there. However, spoiler, not much is really there. Although navigating around the neighbour's creepy dark basement with him patrolling it is a great concept, the reality is more puzzles, parkour, bugs, and actually not having to deal with a neighbour much at all. Like when I played it, I literally had the place to myself. Once you reach the exit, you can't actually leave, and end up getting caught and sent on to Act 2. You wake up in a room in the neighbour's basement with fake outdoor scenery behind the windows, and after climbing through some vents, you reach his back garden. Except, I don't know how long you were trapped in his basement for, because the neighbour has now built tall fences around the garden, trapping you inside. To get out, you have to solve puzzles to do with the pipes hanging from his house, as well as parkour, my least favourite thing. Eventually, you escape by jumping off of his trampoline. From this point onwards, the game switches from being a horror game that is focused about beating the neighbour's AI towards a game about parkouring and solving pointless puzzles. An example of one of the puzzles you have to solve to advance is one in Act 3, where you have to find 4 pieces of cake and 4 mannequins around the house, to arrange them around a table, a bit like a birthday party. Doing this gives you a toy gun, which you then use in yet another puzzle. At this point, the game feels more tedious and frustrating than fun. And players quickly pointed out that there is no indication that the cake pieces or mannequins are special in any way, and there is nothing at all in the game to tell you where to put them. At almost every act of the game, I had to constantly search up what I needed to do because the game is so confusing. And although some fans comment that the bad puzzle designs gives the game character, and that it also makes the game more fun and challenging, most players were left frustrated and disappointed, contributing greatly to the decline in popularity that the full release of the game saw. Fast forwarding towards Act 4, because the buggy parkour challenges of the previous acts were driving me insane, we get to see the finale of the game, where unfortunately, things get even more confusing. The neighbour is now giant, and you have to yet again parkour and float down with an umbrella, like Mary Poppins, towards a house on top of the neighbour's back. I'm not exactly sure what is going on anymore, and I'm sure I'm not the only one. What happened to the original concept of the game of exploring the creepy neighbour's house who adapts to your every move to find the secrets he is hiding in his dark basement? Once you enter the house, your final task is to protect your younger self from whatever this is. Basically, you have to continuously follow your younger self and stand in front of him whilst your older self's body begins to grow upwards. Eventually, your body becomes too big for the house, and you break out. And oh, well, that was something. Don't get me wrong, I did somewhat enjoy that, but for me, the full release will never be as good as the original alphas, and I'm far from alone in thinking this. The facts are there. What started as an original concept of an indie horror game, popularised by many YouTubers with millions of views, eventually turned into a game with more puzzles, bugs, and parkour than what the developers actually promised was going to be in the game originally. And even with many more titles being released years afterwards, and with a Hello Neighbor 3 promised to be released soon, the game's popularity is not what it was. However, that doesn't mean that Dynamic Pixels and tinyBuild haven't had much success with the game's release. They've had lots of success, mind you. There is still a large fan base to this day that support the games and follow the lore. To be honest with you, I'm not that into the lore, but if you are, fair enough. And at the end of the day, it is up to you and you alone whether you enjoy a game or not.